number 1. It says yellow seeds are dominant. Then I'm going to make my key, and I'm going to use my letter as Y, because in this case yellow seeds are dominant. So that's my key here. So big Y is yellow, little y would be green, because it says dominant to green. So that means lowercase y would be green. Always make your key, okay? Students are skipping this part and they're getting the answer wrong. Please make a key before you start. That's the first step. Don't skip that part. Second step, draw your Punnett square. Not too big, not too little. Big enough to fit the letters, but small enough to fit the parents on the outside. I like to draw this little line right here to separate the parents, to remind you that parent A goes here, parent B goes here, or vice versa. It doesn't matter where you put the parents as long as they're on the outside of the Punnett square, not on the inside, and side by side. So for example, it says show a cross between a homozygous yellow seed. So homozygous yellow, homozygous means same. Yellow in this case is capital, so I'm going to put 2 capital Y's. Okay, then green. Okay, we know green is recessive, so in order for the trait to be shown as green, you have to have 2 little y's. Okay? Then I'm going to drop in my y's into the Punnett square, but I'm going to want to put the big Y first, always. So no matter if the big Y is on this side or the big Y is on that side, you're going to want to put the dominate trait first, because it's easier to see when you're analyzing your Punnett square, okay, or when you're looking at the offspring. Okay, so we made our Punnett square. Okay, remember I just dropped them in, dropped in the Y's, but I put the big Y first, just because it's big. If there was little y's, then I would just put little y's. Okay, so I started with my key based on what the problem said, and then I made my cross with the parents based on what the problem said. Last, I need to look at what they are asking for. It says identify the genotypic and phenotypic ratios. Okay, when they're asking for the genotype, they're asking for the letters, okay, like the T's. If they're asking for the phenotype, they're asking for the trait, the physical. You actually have to write out the physical characteristic, whatever it is, okay? So this time, the genotype, all of the offspring happen to be heterozygous, and they're asking for the ratio. In the ratio, you just tell me the number. So I would put 4 heterozygous Y's, 1 big, 1 little. The phenotype, again, the phenotype's actual trait, and their actual trait here is yellow, and they're all yellow because they all have a big Y. Notice I'm always going back and looking at my key, okay? So I'm going to put 4 that are yellow, okay, and then there's 0. Usually we do ratios, we do little dots instead of like the division bar, and there's 0 green. But for the most part, just what's there is good, okay? So 0 green. I'm going to go ahead and do another problem on the back, something different. So let's go ahead and do number 5 as an example. So it says, in a pea plant, round seeds are dominant over wrinkled. Okay, so they give us right away so we can make our key. Round seeds, or key, I just want to make sure you can see it. Okay. Round seeds are dominant. So I'm going to put a capital R because that's what is dominant. And then little r has to be wrinkled. Okay. And I picked R because R for round, round is dominant. If wrinkled would have been dominant, I probably would have picked W. But then again, if you want to just use T, that's easier for you, you can do that too. Okay, a plant is homozygous dominant for round seeds. So we're going to draw our Punnett square. They're telling us our parents. So a plant is homozygous dominant. Remember, homo means same. Dominant is round, big R. So they want two big R's because it's homozygous. Okay, is crossed with a heterozygous, keywords, heterozygous plant. Heterozygous, we should know. Let's say, oh, I forgot. I don't know what heterozygous is. I'm going to get my key. Heterozygous, oh, it's one big, one little. Okay. So in this case, my big and little are R's. So I'm going to put one big, one little. So it's still round. It's just happened to be heterozygous round. What is the probability the offspring will have wrinkled seeds and round seeds? So they want to know the phenotype percentage. That's what they're asking for. So let's go ahead and make our Punnett square. R, big R, big R. These are homozygous dominant. Big R, little r, putting the big R first. Big R, little r. This is heterozygous. Okay, but they're not asking for the letters. They're asking for the wrinkled or round. And in order to be wrinkled, they need to have two little r's. So they're 0% wrinkled, obviously, because all of them have at least one dominant trait. And remember, dominant trait covers up the recessive trait. I don't remember if I said that. Okay, and then 100%, they're actually all round. And that is the percentage for these two parents. So every time this plant will fertilize, they will produce offspring of round. They cannot produce an offspring of wrinkled. So that's what this means. Okay, so that I want you to go ahead and try the rest on your own. Okay, and of course, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask me. Then I'm going to move on to the second Punnett square practice. And I like this one because it has a lot of reading. You guys need to get in the habit of reading these. Okay, as I said before, we looked at the data from the previous test, and students scored lowest on this. And I have a feeling students scored so low is because they didn't know the vocabulary words that I went over, and they didn't want to read it because these questions tend to be a little bit longer than the other questions. So we're going to practice reading. So we're going to go ahead and do the first one. Okay, and this is the instructions, kind of what I went over in the first one. So it says, what are the chances of offspring being homozygous brown hair? Okay, so it says, determine the possible alleles in the gametes. Remember, gametes are sex cells. You might want to write that down to remember. Gametes are sex cells, sperm or egg. The two alleles separate in meiosis so that each gamete gets only one allele. So remember, you're getting one allele from mom, one allele from dad. We kind of showed that in the eggs, and we showed that with the coins in the crazy traits. So the mother, who is heterozygous, so that's the mother, can have eggs that are either big B dominant, little b recessive traits. And the father will also be heterozygous. Now complete a Punnett square to be able to answer the questions. Mother's gametes go on top of father's gametes on the left side. Mother's gametes, okay, so they want us to put mother's gametes on top. So that's mother. They happen to give us the letters. And father's on the left side. So father is also heterozygous. And then we've skipped our key, so let's go ahead and write our key. So the key says, what are the probability of crossing heterozygous brown hair? So if it's heterozygous brown, that means the dominant trait has to be brown, because that's what's shown, that's what's expressed. So that means little b would have to be probably blonde or light hair. So that's our key. Alright, so let's complete the Punnett square. If anyone's confused about this part, please let me know and I can show you. But what I'm basically doing is I'm dropping the B's in and I'm just putting the big B first if there is a big B. Okay, so like in these cases they're big B's, so I put them first. Genotypic ratio. Genotype, remember they're asking for genotype, they're asking for the letters. Okay, so the letters here, there's one big B, big B. Then there's two, so this is homozygous dominant. You need to practice those vocabulary words. There's two heterozygous, big B, little b. See, 1, 2. And then there's one little b, little b. Okay, and you have to count them as together. Okay, kids like to count them separate, but remember this represents one probability of a sperm and egg fertilization. This could be this is the sperm, this is the egg. This is the egg, this is the sperm, because they said this was mother and this was father. Okay? So if they got fertilized, then this would be the outcome of this child. Or if this one got fertilized, this one would be the outcome. So you have to count them as together. Okay? Because that's the only way it's going to count if the sperm fertilizes the egg. Okay, I'm trying to. So these would be little sperms, and these would be eggs. Just to kind of visualize how this works. Okay, next, phenotypic ratio. So they're still talking about the ratio, so they're still asking for the numbers, but the phenotype is the actual trait. So the trait here is brown and blonde. So because these have at least one big B, 1, 2, 3, 3 would be brown, 3 have a chance of being brown, and 1 has a chance of being blonde or light hair.